Uh, Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Let's Talk Policy. I'm Smita Sharma. I'm an independent journalist and a visiting faculty at the Kautilya School of Public Policy. Alok Verma, our guest, has joined in. Alokji, are you able to hear us? Alokji, can you hear us?
I can't hear you.
Okay, we will try and sort out the connection with Mr. Alok Verma, but just give us 1 second if you could bear with us. So basically, this is the subject where we try and talk about issues, take a deep dive, and look at, of course, contemporary issues also, but from a policy frame, from a policy perspective. And before I go on to talk about today's issue, let me just remind all of you who are tuning in that the admission season is on for the Masters in Public Policy at Kautilya, which is in Hyderabad. Do take a look at the prospectus and the admission brochures all on the Kautilya website. Now, moving on, as far as today's issue is concerned, we saw that heartbreaking incident happened just a few days ago when trains piled on. The Coromandel Express that crashed first into a goods train and then into another train. This happened, of course, in Balasore in Odisha, and on 2nd of June. The sheer amount of lives that were lost, close to 300 people who lost their lives, bodies were mangled up. The number of people who were injured was a lot higher. And also there were people who were missing. The families had to go through hell, of course, when they had to try and look for their loved ones who were either admitted in different hospitals or who could not be traced. The matter for the moment has been, of course, handed over to the Central Bureau of Investigation, the CBI, which is looking into the issue. And prima facie, in fact, the reports that have been submitted so far to the Railway Safety Commissioner, what CBI is at the moment saying is the suspicion is that this was the work of a junior engineer. It was perhaps a deliberate tampering of the signaling that happened. So on this edition of Let's Talk Policy, we are going to talk about some key issues. When we look at the mammoth Indian Railways network and the infrastructure, which essentially belongs to the colonial era, how safe is the Indian Railways network today, especially when it comes to the congestion that has been written about now, especially in the wake of that aftermath of that accident? What really are the signaling complications we are talking about? And this accident happening at a time when Prime Minister Modi has been flagging off new high-speed, the semi-high-speed automatic trains, the Vande Bharat Express, amidst a lot of fanfare. So are we ready for, in fact, the high-speed and the semi-high-speed trains? These are the other issues. And to talk about it, I'm joined here by Mr. Mahesh Mangal, who was the former general manager of the Indian Railways. We are facing some issues with Mr. Alok Verma, but hopefully he will be able to sort out those issues. He's a retired railway engineer and somebody whose articles you have been reading in the past few weeks in New York Times to Indian Express. Mr. Mangal, I want to start by coming to you, sir. And, we also have participants in the room. I'll be taking on their questions as the conversation progresses, because you are somebody who has worked a lot on signaling. So when we say that prima facie, it looks like this was a signaling issue caused by a deliberate human tampering. What does it really mean, particularly in the context of this accident?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Smita. I think now there are already almost more than 2 weeks since this accident has happened. And a lot of things are now clear. In fact, right from first day, things were known that this Coromandel Express had a green signal. So it was supposed to go at highest permissible speed, which was 130 kilometer, and it was running at about 128. That is what the report was. And it was supposed to run at full speed. But unfortunately, when it was after passing the home signal, it was entering into the station, it went into the loop line instead of the main line. Loop line, in fact, the speed limitations are only 30 or 50 kilometers only. But this train at full speed has entered into the loop line, and on loop line, freight train was standing, and it collided, and in fact, the loco went above the guard's brake one, and all the bogies were damaged, and then the train was going, Yashwantpur Howrah was going on the another line. So even the coaches went onto that, and some last few coaches got involved for the Yashwantpur Howrah also. Because of this, there was a lot of casualty. So when the train is going on the green signal, it was supposed to go on the main line only. And this has happened. I think whatever reports we have, some people were working in the level crossing gate relay hut. And maybe, of course, you are telling it to be a deliberate attempt, deliberate mistake, but normally nobody is going to do a deliberate interference with the signaling system. And I think whatever has happened may be due to some mistake. And of course, main thing which is responsible is they were not following any rules.
Right.
When you are working, trains are being worked on the signals, you are not supposed to work anyway. If you have to work, then you have to take a disconnection or a block. So train cannot run during that time, or even if the train runs, they run at a very slow speed. They are manually operated. But in this particular case, train was running at full speed, and they were working in the level crossing gate area, doing some modification which was not supposed to be done. So,
so
it is a criminal negligence. I can only say that it is a criminal negligence on the part of the people who are working. And in fact, station staff also should be aware about that, that they are working, and they should also have taken care about those mistakes. In fact, when this goods train, freight train has come on the loop line, they should have normalized the point also. Unfortunately, that was also not normalized. That was also in the reverse condition, and these mistakes happened in the relay room, and which caused this.
So stay with me, because yes, I would like to point out here that of course the investigation report is still not finalized. It's not out in the public domain. What of course Times of India reported earlier today, and I'm reading from the report, it said that the junior engineer entrusted with signaling work in Soro and Bahanaga Bazaar came under the scanner because signal protocols were found violated. A source said the CBI has zeroed in on human interference in signaling as the reason for the accident. Of course, this interference could be deliberate or could be inadvertent. At this point in time, it could simply be a case of criminal negligence, as of course Mr. Mahesh Mangal is saying. Mr. Alok Verma, if you're able to hear us now, please, I would like you to come into the discussion and share your thoughts. When you look at Indian Railways today, this kind of a signaling issue, is this a frequent challenge? Is this something that has happened in the past?
Actually, CAG gave a report in 2021 about the punctuality, and then next year they gave a report about derailments. Both these reports are eye-openers because they show that Indian railway system, particularly on the trunk routes, for example, this Howrah-Chennai, where this Chennai line, where this accident has taken place, on the trunk routes, the system is not, the train operations are not going on properly. Now, there are many reasons which they have pointed out. Number one is that the asset failure rate is extremely high. Whether it is rail failure, it is loco or carriage failure, or it is signal failure, the asset failure is very high. Number two, maintenance blocks are not given on time. Okay, there is something called integrated block where all the departments carry out their work together, so that you don't take different blocks, you just take one big block, and all departments, whether it is signaling, electrical or track, they all do their work. That system is not working. And then the timetabling is also very wrong. I mean, this was an eye opener to me also. I was not aware that timetabling has become so haphazard. You see, they have pointed out that there are trains, long distance trains running on our system, which have 100 stops, 50 or more stops, So these trains, they are going to hit your system. And that is the reason why goods trains are also not running properly. So all these things indicate a need for total overhaul in the working of Indian Railways, maintenance as well as operations. Otherwise, you see, Indian Railway since 2014, if you recall, they have been saying our system is saturated. We are running lines in excess of capacity. They say at some places we are running lines at 150% capacity. Now this is absurd. There is something totally wrong. How can you run trains, on 150% capacity? It means you are compromising on maintenance, and this is what CAG report has said.
So what is the desired capacity? When you say that we are running on overcapacity, give us a figure of what is the desired capacity for a country like India. What is it that we are currently running on?
Normally, the international practice also is that you should not, utilization should not be more than 70%. 70% of the capacity, so that you have enough slack available, so that if anything happens, some accident, some system failure, some rail failure, some loco failure, all these things can be taken care of. They do not have cascading effect. Today, if a rail fracture takes place, if a rail breaks down, during train operation, then you can have 20 to 30 trains being hit by that one incidence. So it should be 70% and it should not exceed 90%. So right now, there is a very urgent need to improve, or in fact, rather no improvement. Improvement is a mild word. There's a need for overhaul of the train operations and maintenance. Maintenance, I mean everything: track, signaling, OHE, that is your overhead electrical supply wires, and other things also, locos, carriages. When trains go, before they return for the next trip, they should be given adequate maintenance. So this CAG report, normally what happens is CAG reports are forgotten. Okay, they come, there are some newspaper articles, and then soon they are forgotten. This accident points out that look carefully at both these reports. These 2021 and 2022 reports are eye openers.
Okay. So, Mahesh ji, coming to you, taking forward what Alok ji is talking about, because we have seen rail minister after rail minister in this country, be it from Lalu Prasad Yadav, Mamta Banerjee, Dinesh Trivedi, to now Mr. Ashwini Vaishnav. There have been claims made by subsequent governments that we have allocated greater budgets to railway. Our railway ministry budgets, in fact, are celebrated like it's a festival, that we have been upgrading. Is there a huge gap currently between what is being allocated to railways and what is the actual need for a railway overhaul to take place that Mr. Alok Verma is talking about?
Yes, Smita, you are right. I mean, if we have to cater to the traffic requirement of today's, our major routes, you can say, are totally saturated. And the requirement for upgradations, not only the cost, but time frame it will require to carry out those work also would take time. You cannot, even if the funds are allotted, you cannot overnight spend those money. Even today, 2.4, 2.6 crore are being allotted to Indian Railways. And last financial year, we did spend 2.4 crore, 2.4 lakh crore rupees on the upgradation of network, including, of course, the replacement works and procurement of locomotives and other things. Of course, we have spent track renewal, signaling, all those things put together. But requirement is very large. If we want to decongest, like Alok was telling, there are sections with more than 150% of the capacity. So how can you do overnight? Overnight is not possible. So what is the other way around? Can you reduce the number of trains? Can you reduce the freight trains? Is it possible? That is also very difficult decisions. Yes, we definitely need trains. People are traveling from one place to another place, and railway being the cheapest mode for transportation. We cannot say we cannot take you from one place to another place. So we have to run. So we have to have balance between both safety as well as running the trains. So what he was telling about the integrated blocks, in fact, those things are defined in the working timetable of Indian Railways. So block timings have been defined. They have to be followed. And I think after this accident, definitely there will be more emphasis on traffic department. Their responsibility is not only to run trains, but provide adequate time for maintenance. In fact, in European railways and other things, you will find weekend they will have very few trains running. So they do get time. Even in suburban section of Bombay, if you will find night, there is no train running. Metro system, you can see night, there are no trains. So they do the maintenance work during that time. But Indian Railway, trains are running 24/7.
So isn't that also because railways is still one of the cost-effective methods for bulk transportation? I mean, look at our flight tickets costs. They are, a Delhi to Leh ticket is going anywhere between 54,000 rupees. The ordinary Indian who travels in a general sleeper class, many of them travel ticketless. Or, a lot of people who died during this unfortunate accident were actually in the general class. So do we have that option of, say, for instance, what you're saying, what the European railways did, that let the number of rails reduce during the weekends, considering we are a country of 1.4 billion people?
It's not possible. It's not possible. So we have to find a way. How can we balance maintenance and train operations? And Alok has set a very good point about the timetable, in fact. Our timetabling is also not matching with the maintenance block which needs to be given. I think there has to be a better method for having a timetable so that the trains are run in kind of a corridor. There should be a mail express corridor, there should be a freight corridor, and there should be a time available throughout a section where block are to be given. So we should not mix the traffic. What is happening today is we are mixing the traffic, freight train as well as mail express and passenger trains, which results into delay and occupation of blocks for a longer time.
Okay. Let me also remind the attendees in the room at this point in time, if you have questions for our experts, please feel free to drop it in the chat box with your name or raise your hands. I will give you a chance to ask your questions too. Mr. Alok Verma, taking this conversation forwards, particularly on this subject, because when it comes to the last few years, maybe statistically, we saw that the number of accidents were lesser. But then again, you have an accident, which is one of the deadliest in decades. So when it comes to the safety index, really, India is pretty much at the low, very low in the ranks. We compare to countries that are really poor when it comes to safety index.
Let me say one thing, that this is a wrong impression that accidents have reduced. If you analyze the data, you will find the major reduction in accidents is because of elimination of unmanned level crossings. Over the last 15 years, I think it was last year, that today the last unmanned level crossings was removed. So today on our system, we do not have any unmanned level crossings. And this figure of improvement in safety is on that account alone. So that is basically an improvement of road user safety, because road users die or suffer injuries in those accidents. So as far as the rail passenger is concerned, you cannot say that there is an improvement. I mean, it is just going up and down. There is no clear trend of decline of accidents on Indian Railways. And as I had written in my article on Indian Express, in the last 20 years, such a horrendous accident has not taken place anywhere in the world. I examined the data, and I find that the last time such an accident took place was in Tanzania. I mean, that's a African country. So now that's for accidents. Now I will say one thing: a lot can be done. A lot can be done, but for that, both political will as well as administrative will is required. Now, let me tell you, say one by one. I will tell you three things which can be done. Number one, immediately reduce the stops of trains. Okay, no train should stop in less than 100 to 200 kilometers. Today, there are many trains which are stopping at every 25 kilometers. You see, these timetables were prepared 20 years ago. That mindset has to go. Today, road network in the country is very good. And rail is not the only means of transportation. So very easily, you can have stops of all these long distance trains, and our bread and butter are the long distance trains. So drastically reduce the number of stops. And people will understand, because the railway is suffering. Railway is in a bad situation. You have to take some steps. Number two, a startling figure is that we have got too many stations. I mean, I was surprised to see, because after reading the CAG report, I started examining the data. We have a station at every 6 to 7 kilometers. At some places, there is a station at every 5 kilometers. And the international practice is that on double line, there is no need of a station at less than 20 kilometers. Particularly if you should go for automatic signaling, In that case, you can eliminate, in my assessment is that you can eliminate at least 30% of the wayside stations. Now, one station means so many turnouts, like this, where this accident has taken place. If you recall, there are 4 lines. Goods train were standing on 2 lines. They were waiting for path. Because these express trains had to be passed. So every station means, and this has taken place at a turnout, at a switch. That instead of going on the straight line, it went into the loop line. So when we reduce the number of stations, say by 30% on Indian Railway as a whole, the number of these weak points, turnout, sidings, they will also be drastically reduced. Now, third thing which we can do is, that there are still a lot of passenger trains, slow passenger trains, which stop, particularly around big cities, everywhere in the country, wherever you see. Now, in the modern day, there is no need for running these short distance passenger trains which stop at every station, because wherever there is a line, there is a parallel road, and there is a bus service, and other modes of people can use other road-based transportation. So we will have to drastically cut down on these slow passenger trains. So because you see, the situation calls for some very urgent measures. The status quo should not be allowed to continue. And these 3 things I can see very clearly as bringing about a big improvement. And I agree with CAG. What CAG has done in that report is they have examined Delhi-Howrah route, which is our busiest route, Delhi, Gaya, Howrah, which is called as the Grand Chord. And they have said, they have used computer simulation. They have used computer simulation of railway itself, not their own simulation, is the same computer program which is used by Railway Board. And their estimate is that if we streamline the operations, then the existing capacity can meet your present requirement at least, if not for the future, at least the present requirement can be met. So these, I examined, thought over it, and I have identified these three as steps which should be taken to, because the problem is of instability in the operations. Right. Because of which trains are getting hit, there is a bunching of trains, then people adopt shortcuts, as happened in Balasore, as happened in Khatoli, as has happened in there are many instances of staff adopting shortcuts and not following the procedures in maintenance, leading to accidents. So this instability in the system has to be removed by streamlining the operations.
Very good points that you have made, Mr. Mahesh Mangal. If I could come to you, if you want to add to some more, particularly before I start talking about the upgrade, the gauge lines, the Vande Bharat Express, staying on with this issue of signaling. Can signaling be completely automated? Will it make it any safer? How difficult is it to even schedule, some train repair work, some line repair work? In most cases today because of this congestion.
Yes, Peter, what Mr. Alok has given the suggestion, they are very good, but it is not very easy to implement. Closing down 30 to 40% of the stations, it's a very good idea. In fact, I would suggest not only 20 kilometer, it has to be 50 kilometer, which is in fact practice in European railway journey. You don't have, you have automatic signaling, and if in between the train has to stop, it can always stop. Because there would be signal, and then maybe some emergency crossovers are only provided at some places, so that in case of unusual trains can be diverted. But our system, we have built in like that. We thought we will never have automatic signaling, because once you have a station at 50 kilometers, you have to provide automatic signaling. Today on Indian Railways, we hardly have 4,000 kilometers of automatic signaling. Our SDN network itself is 11,000 kilometers. HUN network is another 23,000 kilometers. So total is 35. If we have to provide on 35,000 kilometers automatic signaling CTC, which can definitely do what Alok was telling, but it's a Herculean task. So we are doing only 500 kilometers of automatic signaling in a year. That too, last year it was the highest which Indian Railway has achieved. Earlier it was 200, 300 kilometers. So the emphasis is not there. So it will take a lot of time. And unless you do that, you cannot remove the stations. The stations are going to continue. But definitely, we can do certain things. We can definitely do centralized traffic control monitoring from the centralized location, which may not take as much time as physics, because this automatic signaling, providing KVACH and other things, they definitely take a little bit of time, but CTC, etc. can be done very fast. So some drastic actions are definitely required to change the current focus of adding more and more line. In fact, we are adding third line. Third line, in fact, add more number of crossovers at the stations. In fact,
it's ridiculous.
We have a lot of class of interest which happens here. Which definitely makes things more and more complicated and less time available for maintenance. You are adding so much of assets at stations, and which requires a lot of maintenance, and time is not available, staff is not available. So both are a problem. So that is why
I think we are
kind
trying
of
to,
shortcuts are followed.
as we say that you're trying to cure cancer through pills of migraine. You're not trying to sort out the root issues first. Vignesh PR actually has popped in two questions here in the box. A, he says, why can't airfares be reduced, sir? Who is responsible for the airfares? Of course, largely airlines are talking about the prices of gas and petrol everywhere. We can upgrade airports. This will take away burden of railways. So, and the second question is, how safe is KVACH, that anti-collision system? So on KVACH, I want both of you to share your thoughts, because there has been a huge controversy around and comments being made, whether it was because of the lack of a KVACH, how slow is our KVACH, in fact, system that is spreading. Should we cover, in fact, the sectors that are more crowded first before we expand it to other sectors? Mr. Mangal, would you like to come in first?
Yeah, I will tell you about the KVACH. KVACH is a train control system. It is a ATP system, automatic train control system, which is in fact a must for the capacity at which we are operating the train, because we have not provided any assistance to the loco pilot. He has to see the signal and act. And there have been a lot of major accidents also due to passing signal at danger. But even though this KVACH system we have developed somewhere in 2014, and it was certified SIL 4, which is the highest level of safety in the world, in 2017. But due to some reason or other, because board wanted it European technologies to be used, so it was not proliferated. They were trying to implement ETCS level 2 system on Indian Railways, and which they invited tender, and which was very costly. Ultimately, they decided, when they saw this indigenous system which was developed by RDSO along with Indian firms, it was not only has all the it has a lot of features more than, in fact, the ETCS level 2, and it was also certified for SIL 4, which is which itself says that it is a safe system. So ultimately, decision was taken only in 2021. Okay. And because of that, a lot of time was lost. And so far, only 1,500 kilometers has been done. And now it is only being implemented presently on Delhi-Havda and Delhi-Mumbai section, because of speed is to be increased to 160. So it is not because beyond 130 you cannot go unless you have ATP system provided on the locomotive. So that is why this work is being done. Progress is very slow, and to cover this 35,000 kilometers with present kind of allotment of funds for such system, it will take a very long time. But I can tell you, it is a safe system. It would have not prevented this accident, because once the train enters into the loop line, the distance with the guards brake one was hardly 100 meters. So had KVACH been there on the locomotive, it would have applied emergency brake and generated a SOS. But it would not have saved this accident because of the distance. It would have generated SOS, so even the other train would have stopped. But that
at least the impact would have been minimized.
It's a little bit impact we cannot really predict, but because 3-4 bogies of Coromandel Express was general bogies, which were all packed. So I don't think, because maximum casualties were in those coaches, whether that could have been saved. Little bit impact would have reduced. That's all. So KVACH in general would help, but not for such kind of a case. This is a kind of a rare accident. Because it's interference. If you do interference, if you playing with the system, that any kind of safe system will not be able to take care about that.
Right. So it's almost like what we were saying during COVID, that if you take vaccines, it's not like it will prevent you from having COVID, but it could just maybe reduce the chances of hospitalization. Bana is, of course, also putting it out, saying that KVACH was launched in 2021, but it's still not available in all locos. And as Mr. Mangal said, that out of the 35,000 kilometers, we are looking at KVACH only in 2 sectors as of now, that too only for 1,500 kilometers. Mr. Alok Verma, your thoughts on this entire controversy around KVACH, and which are the sectors that should be prioritized? If there is a good chance that at least it can minimize the impact of such accidents, which sectors should be prioritized right now?
Mr. Mangal has explained very clearly that KVACH is not the solution. It will solve only a small category of accidents. There is a need for system overhaul to remove the instability that we have in operations and maintenance. I will take you back to 2017. Okay, we had serious accidents in 2014, 15, 16. Then 17, this accident happened at Kautilya near New Delhi. It's about 100 kilometers from here. A permanent way inspector, that's a track supervisor, he was waiting for block for several days to carry out certain urgent maintenance of the track. But he was not getting traffic block, saying that there are too many trains in the section. So then by some verbal agreement, they decided that supervisor will open the track and quickly carry out the repair before the next train comes. Now everything went wrong. He could not complete the work in time so quickly as probably they thought. Kalinga Express was coming at full speed. It derailed. I think about 20 people died, 100 people were injured. The member injuring, the top man in charge of track, was sent on leave. And soon after, Mr. Prabhu also left Railway Ministry. So now what happened after 2017 accident? For 1 year, the railway board and the political leaders of the country were so, I think, scared by this frequency of accidents, 15, 16, 17, and this thing happening, that for the next 1 year, the punctuality was massacred because everywhere maintenance was being carried out. Blocks were being given for maintenance of track, for bridges, signaling, locomotives, carriages, everything. For 1 year, people were fed up with the railways that trains are running 5 hours, 10 hours late. So the situation is very urgent, and I have a feeling that this same scenario is going to be repeated. You will see very bad punctuality in the next 1 year as railway board and railway minister also, they say you do maintenance first. Let trains get delayed. So there is a need for bold action, and bold actions are possible. Even after after the CAG report, railway board reduced the stoppages of about 100 trains. So it is doable, but just because some people think that it may be unpopular step, no, that will not do. The things have changed. Road work has improved a lot in the country. You don't have to have stoppages of trains. You see, there is this Vivek Express, which goes from Tinsukia to Kanyakumari. It is the longest train in the country, longest running trains. It has 100 plus stoppages. After the CAG report, I think they have reduced it to about 70. So these things are doable. Reduce the number of stops of long distance train, eliminate stations, okay, and stop these slow passenger trains which stop at every station and which don't really serve any purpose, because the people who are using these trains can very well use road. If these three measures are taken, I think without sacrificing on punctuality, which will cause a lot of harassment to the people and which will lead to the railway becoming more unpopular, people will then have no option but to shell out money and go by air. Hardly 2% of the people in this country can afford to travel by air. That is not a solution. And air is not a good and is not very good, in the sense that, this air pollution, climate change, energy consumption, this is not a very good thing. In fact, I will give you example of China. In China, the railway system is so good, and this I have written in my article also, that domestic travel by air is not preferred by people. Even though they can pay, they prefer to go by train and not by air. Air they use for international travel, or when they are not getting seat in the train. So we have to, I mean, you see, Indian Railway is state-owned, 100% controlled by the government. You can compare Indian Railways with the Indian military. The same control which government has on military, that control railway government has on railways. And railways is the lifeline of the country. It is time to take bold measures and remove these root causes which are leading to this bad. You see, safety and punctuality, they have to be seen together. Sacrificing punctuality for the sake of safety is not a solution. You have to meet both these fundamental needs, safety and punctuality.
Okay. I have a lot of...
I would like to add one thing, I mean, like KVACH, I will tell you about a few more things about that. It will, because it provides you a cap signaling, it increases the line capacity. It has a continuous authority like it is level 2. It will result into increase in line capacity also. To that extent, it will decongest. And it permits speeds up to 160 kmph. So that will also add to the additional capacity on this highly dense network. To that extent, with the provision of KVACH, possibility of getting some more blocks, maintenance time should be possible.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions in the chat box. What I will do is, Gautam and Atharv, I've allowed you to speak. If you want to ask the question directly, go ahead, Gautam, first. Otherwise, I can take the question from the chat box.
Okay, can you hear?
Yes.
Okay, so I have a question. During recent years, I have a really I'm really concerned about this decisions, as many of the zones are like reducing the sleeper class coaches from like 10 or 12 to just 3, and increasing AC 3-tier coaches to like 9 or 10, while converting the coaches from IRS to LSB coaches. So this is the example. I can tell you the example that Lokmanya Tilak Coimbatore Express, and the recent one is Goa Express, just having 2 or 3 sleeper coaches and like 9 or 10 AC 3-tier or 3-tier economy coaches. So as a result of these actions, these actions, like many sleeper and general coaches have been crowding into AC coaches, and it has become a burden to travel in AC coaches in some of these sections. So I would like to know why this decision has been made.
Anybody particular that you want to throw this question to?
No, anybody.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Gautam.
I'll answer that, You see, this practice of removing sleeper class and general coaches, it has been going on for last 4 or 5 years. It is not a good thing. It is not a good trend, because it is also, you see, our traffic numbers are also falling. If you look at the data of pre-COVID data of last 3 years, that is 3 years prior to COVID, because after that, the system is still not fully stabilized, you will see a fall in passenger traffic. So that is also an important thing. Then where will these people go? People who cannot afford AC 3-tier, how will they travel? People in India, people travel long distance for work, for education, for various needs. So what are you leaving for them? In fact, people say that poor people are forced to travel long distances overnight by buses. So that's not a happy situation. So I think this again, the same problem is that we have to address the root cause. so that this so-called man-made overcongestion can be eliminated, and we can run more trains. And second thing is, that Indian Railway has not added new lines on the trunk routes. Our trunk routes are the quadrilateral and the diagonals. Okay, you get it? I mean, the 4 cities connecting them, these 6 routes, they are the trunk routes. They carry about 40% of the total traffic, passenger and freight, although in length they are less than 10%. We should be building new lines. Now, this data is also startling, that before independence, the Chinese railway was 1/3 in size, its route length was 1/3 of India. And today, their route length is more than twice of India. From 1/3, they have gone to more than double of India. So actually, we have been focusing too much on gauge conversion, on doubling. Okay, this is okay. Gauge conversion, doubling are okay. You do it. But the main thing is you have to build new lines also. Like Delhi, Havda, Delhi, Chennai, Chennai, Bombay, Delhi, Chennai. You should have parallel line. The existing line, the existing lines can carry freight traffic and slow passenger trains, and the new lines can carry faster trains. So we have to not only remove this problem of congestion, we also, because traffic is growing, there is a latent demand, there is a pent-up demand which the government railway is not able to meet. So there is an urgent need for big investment on Indian railways. And I think we have to make about 10,000 kilometers of new lines. We have to upgrade about 15,000 kilometers of existing lines. So that's a lot of work, but it can be done in next 10 to 15 years. And we have to do. Presently, Indian government has not come out with any plan to increase the capacity of the existing network. You tell me, is there any plan? No, Railway Board has no plan. As Mr. Mangal is also saying, and I find it very ridiculous that they are adding third line. You see, third line will complicate the operations, which are already very complicated, and a third line will add no more than 10% of the capacity, which is insignificant. So instead of, you see, it seems it is a shortcut, that we can quickly add a third line. No, but that's not a solution. Increasing 10% capacity and then complicating the operations is not the solution. We should make new lines for the long term.
Okay. Atharv, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question, please.
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. My question is that why can't all trains can be self-propelled like Vande Bharat so that they can climb the hills easily? And also it can also reduce the time of the trains, because I have seen that my village is in Lonavala, so I have seen that almost all trains halt at Karjat because to attach the banker engine so that they can climb the hills easily. And in comparison, Vande Bharat is not halted. It goes easily and climbs the hill. It doesn't take times, and that's why trains are getting also late at sometimes. This is my question.
Okay, Mr. Mangal, if you could come in on this, and then I'll continue on Vande Bharat for the next few minutes with Mr. Verma.
Yes, his question is good, Yani. I mean, Indian Railways should have trains like Vande Bharat. It was already late. It has been developed indigenously, and they are being introduced. I think they will come in passenger trains also. Yani. I mean, metro trains also would be running maybe after some time. I think there is already a target of almost 250, 300, 400 Vande Bharat to be run. Again, it requires a lot of expenditure. Production capacity is also limited. So it will take time for such technology to be implemented, but it will definitely help in many other things. In addition to what he is telling, climbing the hills and things like that, it will help in faster acceleration, deceleration, higher speed, and of course, less time at terminals, and you can reverse the train and run like EMU trains are running in Mumbai Suburban or Howrah or Delhi. So it will be similar to that, which will happen. In fact, we had introduced for memos and other things. So they also do to some extent. Of course, in Vande Bharat, each coach is self-driven. Each coach has a power unit. Whereas in EMUs or memos, 3 or 4 coach, 5 coach will have one motorized system, and then they are attached. So definitely they will help in improving the and solving many of the problems. But it will take time.
But Mr. Mangal, because I was also looking at some interviews in the past by Mr. Alok Verma, and I would like Mr. Verma to come in on this. We hear mixed thoughts that the idea of Vande Bharat is good. Should it be a mutually exclusive idea at this point in time that, let's prioritize first because we don't have enough budget. We are not building enough, as you say, the gauge line expansions, the other, in fact, infrastructure. Let's do that first before adding these new semi-high speed, or should these progress simultaneously? Because if we don't do it now, it will be too late to do it in the next few years. Mr. Verma.
Let us look at the data. We have introduced, I think, 12 to 15 Vande Bharat trains in last 2 years. Now you see how much journey time reduction is there. It is usually 10 to 20 minutes, 15 minutes only. No more reduction. And then secondly, their speed is limited by the track because your track is fit for somewhere for 110 maximum, somewhere for 130, a few places for 150 kmph. And then there is the problem of acute congestion that is there in the system. So these Vande Bharat trains, despite their excellent acceleration and deceleration, they are not able to significantly reduce the time, which is borne by the facts. The facts say that you are able to reduce journey time by just 10 to 20 minutes. In rare cases where there's like Delhi to Varanasi, because it's a very long distance, it I think saves about half an hour, but generally it is 10 to 15 minutes or maybe 20 minutes. So the priority should be on taking care of the system, eliminating the root causes of congestion and the instability in maintenance and this thing. Adding Vande Bharat trains will only add to the already congested routes. It will aggravate the problem. It will not solve the problem, it will aggravate the problem. Vande Bharat is a very good thing. I mean, let me say, I'm not against Vande Bharat. It's a good idea. It's a good train. But you should not run, my advice to Railway Board is that don't run Vande Bharat on routes where there is acute congestion. Keep this in mind. There are certain routes, where congestion is not there. Run them on those routes, say Delhi to Dehradun and places like this, it is okay. But say these trunk routes, avoid running any Vande Bharat trains on these trunk routes, the quadrilateral and diagonals. Please avoid doing that. Focus should be on removing the bottlenecks and the hindrances to proper maintenance and operations. That should be the top priority. Otherwise, Vande Bharat just gives you better comfort today. Today, what value you get out of Vande Bharat? You get better ambience, you get better seats. It's basically more comfort, Otherwise, there is no reduction in journey time. And what you need is reduction in journey time. Our trains take, you see, a 500-kilometer journey today takes about 8 to 10 hours. Whereas if you raise your speed, remove congestion, that same journey can be completed in just about 3 hours. So the problem is congestion. If you remove the congestion, your Vande Bharat will save much more time, maybe 20 to 30%, just by eliminating this problem of congestion and instability in the operations and maintenance.
Okay, let me give a chance. I have the last 15 minutes. I'll ask Neil Banerjee and then Vignesh to ask your questions. Neil has a related question on Vande Bharat. Neil, go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Smita. Am I audible?
Yes.
So my question here is related to Vande Bharat. So are these high-speed trains, so-called high-speed trains, a big leap from the technical perspective than the existing trains? Because as far as I understand that these are basically LHB rakes built up together with self-propulsion built into it. So apart from the cosmetic changes, are there any major technical upgrades? Because the undercarriage is more or less the same. And also
Mr.
and also a normal train with LHB coach can cover the distance in exactly the same time if we provide the same priority to those trains.
Yeah. Mr. Mangal, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, definitely it is a technological upgradations because each coach is a powered unit. So it is a distributed powering which is being done, and such kind of trains are existing in entire Europe or any if you see the advanced country including China. So definitely LHP is like a older technology only. I mean, they are powered by locomotives from the front. So as far as technological lead is concerned, definitely it is changing it is modernizing the railways. And it is what other countries are using for mail and express trains, which give you more comfort. It is give you more stability and give you more speed also.
Okay, but I think it's important to keep in mind what Mr. Alok Verma was saying, that don't add them to the quadrilaterals at this point in time. Try and reduce the congestion first. Vignesh, please go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question.
Thank you, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, sir. So I just have a small suggestion. I do not know if it is already there or not. Like, I play a lot of video games. In that thing, I would be acting like the train traffic controller. Over there, every train will have some pointer or some bar-like pointer to tell us where the train is. So why can't we mimic the same radar system in our Indian railways? Is it already there? Because a loco pilot will also have in a screen where the other trains are in the vicinity. So like that, is it possible?
Okay, Mr. Verma, do you want to take a
So,
I
have I
think
posed my
this
question
question
clearly?
first?
Mr. Mangal can answer this better because he is a signaling man and it's concerned more with track circuiting and communication. I think he can answer this question better.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
Vignesh,
in fact, if I can add, Mr. Mangal, because you were talking about that, how you need a centralized signaling system. Will this be similar something to for the layman like me, like an ATC that you have for airports? Or do we already have an ATC kind of system when it comes to this kind of signaling, something that Vignesh is also asking about?
in fact, we do have a system in which we have a centralized display available to the controller and at the control office. We right now we are using a simple system which we call as a data logger, and data logger provides a display of all the trains running, and we have provided at many places to the controller also who is operating the trains. They have a display of each stations and every train where it is. It is being fully tracked. And in fact, once we have automatic signaling, and we have like CTC in Ghaziabad, Kanpur sector. So you have a continuous display. I mean, every 100 to 200 meters, you will have a display available and at what speed they are running. All those kind of displays are available. And we are also providing a GPS-based system on the locomotives, which also tracks the train and gives the display, update the information onto the controller's terminal. So they have the live information. So of course those things are available, and it will improve with the more and better technologies now being deployed. It will improve further.
Okay, I'm just going to take the last two questions from the chat box. Gautam has another question. If Mr. Verma, you want to talk about it, I think you've spoken about it a bit. He's talking about the punctuality of trains that he has concerns about, especially in routes like Nagpur, Bilaspur, Jharsuguda, Balharsha, Vijayawada. I mean, of course, there are too many sections that we can name that freight trains are given more priority over passenger trains. What do you do about it? And also about faking the updates of the NTES, especially the arrival of trains. He has mentioned Sikandrabad in particular. It could be a larger problem.
You see, CAG report has given a lot of data, and they have done data mining to come out with some excellent figures. The average speed of freight trains on Indian railways is less than 25 kilometers per hour. At that speed, a train from Delhi, freight train from Delhi to Chennai will take almost 10 days. Now, in the modern world, that is too slow. So, and the problem is the same, our freight trains are fit for running at 80 to 100 kilometers per hour, but they are giving average of only 20. Because there is so much of congestion, there is so much of instability in the system, cascading effects of asset failures. So these problems have to be first eliminated. Without eliminating these problems, the same thing will continue. And let me tell you one thing, that compared to road and air, railways trump card is speed. You see, in road, what you have got is you have got better roads, you have got segregated roads, okay, so that there is more safety and you get better speed because there is no cross flow of traffic. In airlines, you see, the speed of planes is constant for last 50 years. Concorde came, it went away. The speed is same. So it is the capacity, the fare, which are driving the growth of air transport. But in railways, you look internationally, the key is raising speed. There is no other way to make railway compete effectively with road and rail. So road and air. So today, the need for Indian Railway is to bring about a speed revolution. We have to double the speed of our trains. It should be possible to travel from Delhi to Chennai overnight in 12 to 14 hours. A distance of 2,200 kilometers should be completed in 12 to 14 hours, not 30 hours as of today.
But can the speed revolution happen on the existing gauges?
No. You see, you have to do both things. You have to first remove the instability in the system so that this network can work efficiently and it can carry most of the freight traffic easily. And as I said, you will have to make new lines also, because on the existing line, you can raise the speed only up to about, say, 180, maximum 180. In some isolated stretches, you can raise it to 20, as China did. You see, China is a very good comparison for India because we are country of the same, almost, in size, in population, in per capita incomes, we are comparable. Not really, we can't, China's per capita income is, I think, about 4 times now, but we are comparable. You see, what China did is between 1997 to 2007, in 10 years, it upgraded all its trunk routes to 160 to 200 kilometers per hour. So after making the system robust, they went on a spree of making high-speed lines. And today, Chinese railway is the envy of the world. They have got, I think, 40,000 kilometers of lines which carry trains at 200 plus, 200 kmph plus, where we are struggling with just 130 kmph. So for the survival of Indian Railway, for it to compete effectively with road and air, the speed has to be increased. So the plate is full. There is a lot to be done in the next 10 to 15 years. And I think the Balasore accident should serve as a reminder that you need bold action to shore up the railway, or the railway will go on a downward spiral, which it has been doing, by the way. If you compare, if you examine the data of freight traffic and passenger traffic of since 2005, the growth is tapering off, and now it is going in the negative.
Okay.
So these are warning bells for the government that you have to. This is your baby. You own it. You control it 100%. You have to improve the Indian railway system.
I'm just going to take
Smita,
two.
I want to
Yes,
just
sir.
add into that. The Indian Railway has a national rail plan which is up to 2051. So it has defined what all needs to be done, including high-speed routes and the thing which Alok has discussed regarding the speed increase on the existing line, as well as high-speed lines which needs to be built in, and then DFC freight corridors which are required to be built in so that it will decongest the existing busy high density network. But it requires a lot of investment. I think it requires totally maybe 40 lakh crore rupees in next 20 years. Of course, we have to
So just
find
briefly,
fund
so
as
just
well
in
as
just briefly, 30 seconds. I mean, we see so much of national highway being built. We are taking pride that it is being built at a good speed. We are getting good highways. So what is the biggest villain then when it comes to adding this new lines that both of you are talking about? Is it really about just the investment money coming in?
No, it is apathy towards railway. I will say very plainly, it is apathy towards railway. You have doubled the national, four-lane highways. You have doubled in last 12 years, and you are planning to add, I think, about 30,000 kilometers of more expressways in the next 5 years. Why could you not build even 1 kilometer of line on the trunk routes of Indian Railway? There is no answer to this. If you can make so many expressways, so many 4+ lane highways, why don't you invest in railways? And I'll tell you, I have done some rough calculations. You have to spend only 10 lakh crore rupees over next 15 years to overhaul the whole system, create sufficient capacity to meet the requirement of coming decades, 30 years, 40 years. But sadly, you see, National Rail Plan is there, and I have examined it very thoroughly. The consultant who has prepared has put copious data and everything, but it is not a good report. Why? If CAG could see that this congestion is man-made, why could that consultant not see, who has prepared that plan, that this is a man-made problem? Why don't you first solve the problem of congestion by streamlining your operations, removing the bottlenecks? That should have been the focus rather than so many things with that report says. I think that report has been prepared by consultants who have produced a shining book full of sketches, diagrams, and other things. But my question is, why could they not highlight this thing, what CAG has said, that your congestion is a man-made problem. You have created that problem, solve that problem first before you talk of any big things,
Right. Okay, just one final word from you, Mr. Mahesh Mangal, as I close this conversation. It's actually a question in the chat box, and I know you are not a politician, but somebody wanted to ask that up to what extent does the frequent change of rail ministers contribute to the Indian Railways' poor infrastructure? Normally, rail ministers don't last for beyond 2 years. Basically, is there an attempt at the top ministry to modernize the railway, or is it still just being used as the biggest vote bank getter, as a vote bank tool, which Mr. Verma said that one of the biggest reasons is the apathy to railways, that railways is being used as that machine to try and ask for votes, but the seriousness of intent of modernizing is missing.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think the change of railway minister in any case will help in reducing such kind of accident, or definitely that will not help. But I think we have to have a serious thought, change our policy decisions. A lot of things needs to be re-looked into, and take an action, planned and thoughtful actions. In fact, to see that on the existing network where trains are running, how we are able to run the trains with efficiency and carry out the upgradation work which are required. And proper upgradation work like third line type of work is still continuing since so many years. I mean, it's really apathy and our traffic department needs to overhaul their mindsets also
Right.
for doing these things, and either going for 4 lines, have parallel lines available like what has been done on the road. Similar things should have been done, because it affects third line, affects the existing infrastructure, and you are not able to run. You compromise on safety. Things like that happens, and wherever it is happening like this.
Right.
I
Absolutely.
think
This is a very wooed after ministry at the end of the day, because it promises to generate the maximum jobs, even if there are huge vacancies increasingly. And all the inputs that both of you have given today here in this session of Let's Talk Policy, very important. These are issues that should have been dealt with like way yesterday itself. It's already very, very late. If this apathy continues, the railways, which is already on the decline, which is very, very clear, we cannot afford to have an unsafe railways, given the size of this country, the population of this country, and perhaps the fact that in many of these accidents, people who die are ordinary, poor people. It does not mean that you just forget about the incident, move on like nothing happened. Our thoughts and prayers with every single life that was lost in that Balasore train accident, the families of the affected, the families who lost their loved ones. For them, healing, closure is a very, very long time away, if they at all get it. But in the meantime, I think, as we get into that election mode, we will have lakhs of crores of rupees coming in as election funds alone. Why can't this be channelized in time where it is way more needed when it comes to the safety of Indian citizens? I'm going to leave it there, but before we end, just a quick reminder again for those of you who tuned in and who are going to watch this conversation. The admission seasons for the Masters in Public Policy at the Kautilya School of Public Policy in Hyderabad is in its last leg. Do take a look at the admission prospectus, the procedures on the website. And thank you so much, Mr. Alok Verma, Mr. Mahesh Mangal, for joining me, as well as to all of you who tuned in and who asked some really sharp questions. Many thanks. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you to you also. You have conducted it very well, and some good questions. Some good questions also.
Thanks, you, Smita. Thank you, Alok.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for getting some ideas from you also. Thanks,
you.